Hi, I'm a 23-year-old female, and my boyfriend is a 24-year-old male. We've been dating for about a year, and I'm very happy in our relationship emotionally. He's very sweet and caring, and I feel like I can be myself around him. However, sexually, I am a bit unhappy. I was a virgin before we started dating, but I'd tried oral intimacy with my ex before. No penetration. And I knew I could pretty much only orgasm with oral stimulation or clitoral stimulation. I mentioned it to my current boyfriend a few times, and he never seemed very keen on the idea. He seems to think that it's just unclean down there or that it smells weird, which made me feel really insecure. I'm a very clean person, and I always clean myself thoroughly when showering. He sees me clean myself too. We shower together. I've tried cranberry juice, eating healthier, etc. because of how much it bothers me during intimacy that I probably smell when I get aroused. I was under the impression that each woman has a certain vaginal scent, and maybe it was normal. I guess it's not. I've asked if he could at least try performing oral intimacy on me once, and he said he would. That was 9 months ago. And he's never done it, and I stopped trying because he doesn't even really like touching me because his fingers still smell when he washes them, and he doesn't want to spread the fluids onto my body during intimacy. It's gotten to the point where, if we're being intimate, I'm the one doing most of the work, both foreplay and intercourse, and pleasuring him, and he maybe sucks on my body part once or twice for 5 seconds during foreplay. Sometimes he'll touch me, but wipe his fingers off immediately afterwards. I never finish. It's just me waiting for him to finish, and then bam, it's over. He passes out. There was this one time after we'd been having intimacy, and he couldn't finish. He says that I get too wet for him to feel anything. So we pulled off the condom, and I was going to perform oral intimacy on him again so he could. He said no. The lube plus my fluids would be how we get sexually transmitted diseases, get sick. I honestly thought he was joking, but he was dead serious. I've only had intimacy with him, and I know he's not cheating on me, so it sort of astounded me that he thinks ingesting bodily fluids automatically give you sexually transmitted diseases. I don't really know what to do or how to bring up that I'm unsatisfied. We both know that I have a higher intimacy drive, not even that high to be honest, and joke about it, so I don't know if it's worth bringing up. I also know his ex cheated on him because he couldn't satisfy her sexually, and he's very insecure about that. How do I fix our intimacy life without ruining our relationship? To add, just wanted to clarify, he doesn't enjoy porn and doesn't really watch it because he studies psychology and knows it messes up your perception of intimacy. I asked him to watch it so he could try new things. He is not gay. Please stop assuming that he is. Also, it's 2024. Stop throwing around gay as a derogatory term. Also, fixed grammar added context. Almost forgot. Please stop messaging me with graphically intimacy tones. It makes me very uncomfortable, and I am literally in a relationship I am trying to fix. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. If he was genuinely concerned about sexually transmitted disease transmission, then he wouldn't let you perform oral intimacy without protection. Almost every sexually transmitted disease can be transmitted orally. And why won't he use a dental dam and flavored lube when going down on you? Seriously, it sounds like he only wants a warm, dry hole. Comment 2. He needs intimacy education, and you need to refrain from having intimacy with him until he actually agrees to prioritize your pleasure. Stop allowing him to use you for his intimacy gratification without considering your needs. In fact, he doesn't even want you to have any bodily fluids. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for reading. So, a lot has happened in the past 2 weeks, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around it all. It started when I decided to have a serious talk with my boyfriend about our intimacy life. I was really nervous, but I knew it had to be done. I told him how I felt, that I was unhappy, and that I needed more from him sexually. At first he seemed a bit defensive, but then he admitted that he had been avoiding the topic because he felt insecure and didn't know how to address it. He said he was afraid of failing me, like he did with his ex, and that's why he was so hesitant to try new things. This conversation was a big deal for us. It was the first time he really opened up about his insecurities, and it made me realize how much his past relationship had affected him. He told me that his ex used to make fun of him for not being able to satisfy her. and it left him feeling inadequate. I felt terrible for him, but I also knew that we needed to move past this if we wanted our relationship to work. We decided to take things slow and try to rebuild our intimacy connection. We started by just spending more time together, being intimate without the pressure of intimacy. We cuddled, kissed, and talked about our fantasies and desires. It was nice to reconnect on an emotional level, and it made me feel closer to him. One night we were lying in bed and he asked me if I could show him what I liked. I was surprised, but also really happy that he was willing to learn. I guided his hand and showed him how to touch me, and for the first time, he seemed genuinely interested in pleasing me. It was a huge step forward, and it made me feel hopeful about our future. But then, something unexpected happened. A few days later, we were at a party with some friends, and I noticed him talking to a girl I didn't know. They seemed to be getting along really well, and I couldn't help but feel a pang of jealousy. I tried to brush it off, but it kept nagging at me. Later that night, I asked him about her, and he told me she was just a friend from his psychology class. He assured me that there was nothing to worry about, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The next day, I found out that the girl he was talking to was actually his ex. I was furious and confronted him about it. He admitted that he had lied to me because he didn't want to upset me. He said that she had reached out to him recently, wanting to apologize for how she treated him in the past. He insisted that they were just friends and that he had no feelings for her anymore. I didn't know what to believe. On one hand, I wanted to trust him, but on the other hand, I felt betrayed. We had just started to make progress, and now this. I decided to give him the benefit of the doubt, but I told him that I needed some space to process everything. During this time, I did a lot of thinking. I realized that my insecurities were getting the best of me, and that I needed to work on trusting him. I also thought about how his past relationship had affected him, and how it was still impacting our relationship. I knew that we both had a lot of baggage to deal with, but I was willing to try if he was. A few days later, we sat down and had another heart-to-heart. He apologized for lying to me and promised to be more honest in the future. He also told me that he had ended things with his ex for good and that he was committed to making our relationship work. I could see how much he was struggling, and it made me realize how much I cared about him. We decided to start fresh and focus on building a stronger foundation. We made a pact to be more open and honest with each other and to work on our insecurities together. It wasn't easy, but we were both determined to make it work. One night we were lying in bed and he asked me if I could show him what I liked. I was surprised, but also really happy that he was willing to learn. I guided his hand and showed him how to touch me, and for the first time, he seemed genuinely interested in pleasing me. It was a huge step forward, and it made me feel hopeful about our future. But then, something unexpected happened. A few days later, we were at a party with some friends, and I noticed him talking to a girl I didn't know. They seemed to be getting along really well, and I couldn't help but feel a pang of jealousy. I tried to brush it off, but it kept nagging at me. Later that night, I asked him about her, and he told me she was just a friend from his psychology class. He assured me that there was nothing to worry about, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The next day, I found out that the girl he was talking to was actually his ex. I was furious and confronted him about it. He admitted that he had lied to me because he didn't want to upset me. He said that she had reached out to him recently, wanting to apologize for how she treated him in the past. He insisted that they were just friends and that he had no feelings for her anymore. I didn't know what to believe. On one hand, I wanted to trust him, but on the other hand, I felt betrayed. We had just started to make progress, and now this. I decided to give him the benefit of the doubt, but I told him that I needed some space to process everything. During this time, I did a lot of thinking. I realized that my insecurities were getting the best of me, and that I needed to work on trusting him. I also thought about how his past relationship had affected him, and how it was still impacting our relationship. I knew that we both had a lot of baggage to deal with, but I was willing to try if he was. A few days later, we sat down and had another heart-to-heart. He apologized for lying to me and promised to be more honest in the future. He also told me that he had ended things with his ex for good, and that he was committed to making our relationship work. I could see how much he was struggling, and it made me realize how much I cared about him. We decided to start fresh and focus on building a stronger foundation. We made a pact to be more open and honest with each other, and to work on our insecurities together. It wasn't easy, but we were both determined to make it work. Thanks for reading. Am I the idiot for confronting my partner about their lies and demanding the truth? So pretty much what happened is there was an incident where she was out all night with her friend, and I didn't hear from her at all. I get up in the morning to a message that she was seen out with her friends and one of her ex-boyfriends. When she finally got up, I guess someone informed me that I was told. She explained the whole night over a text and apologized for the confusion and promised they just ran into him and her friend initiated the conversation, nothing happened, etc. Well, a couple of weeks ago, I found my old phone in a drawer, and surprisingly, it turned on. I had nothing better to do, so I scrolled through old pics. Vacation, kids as babies. It was cool until I came across screenshots I took of those messages from the friend that told me about what was seen and the messages back and forth between us. I messed up and read it all over again. Even though we talked through it at the time and moved past it, we left it at nothing happened, and it was all a big misunderstanding. The messages between us now, years later, with much more emotionally and financially, I could see right through some of the lies about certain details. If I were to sift the lies, it now looks to me like she hit him up, ended up at his house, and got a ride back to her car early in the morning. My heart started pounding. I got dizzy. I'm thinking, have I been duped all of these years? No, I'm just going crazy since I've been extra stressed about a project at work. Wait, maybe I'm not. Since I'm home alone and it's quiet, I'm just sitting on the toilet thinking about, what about this and that time when I questioned something that didn't make sense? What about the time she was so sure I was cheating on her that she called my sister and my parents to talk about it before she could even get a hold of me? What about this comment she made once and that? And I'm sure some of it is nothing, but I can't help to think that some of it is something. Maybe it's because my ex cheated on me at least once and I didn't find out about it until we separated for other reasons. So we had some alone time together and I've been living in this anxious loop, not knowing what to do. She brought something up related to those things that bothered me. The more she talked, the more I realized, wait, there's more to this story because I haven't heard these parts yet. She said I looked upset, and I said, yeah, you told me X happened, and now you say it actually went like X. That's when I asked, what else have you been hiding from me? Nothing, she says. I said, no, I know there's more you're hiding, because that story never made sense, and now you kind of spilled the beans. What else have you been hiding? She knows I recently had to talk to her ex for work reasons. Nothing, why? Did, redacted, say something to you. I told her that I know more than she believes I do, and I'll always love and accept. Come clean. She told me to ask her a question about anything, and she will answer honestly. I said I wanted her to tell me. I don't want to give you an opportunity to know which incident I know about. I'm bluffing at this point. After pressing hard, she hits with a curveball. She hooked up with some random guy about 3 weeks after we met. Not a huge deal. We weren't serious at all yet. But the ongoing assumption based on a lie was that she hadn't been with anyone in months when we met. That's all I could get out of her. And for some reason, I still don't believe it. These thoughts have been occupying my mind for weeks. And while I pretend everything is fine, I can't concentrate on anything without thinking about it and trying to figure out what's true and what's not. We have a good relationship. I do love her and honestly don't think I would let her go if we uncovered something like that and are able to move past it. What should I do from here? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Unless I'm missing something, it sounds like you are way overthinking things and that you have gone through her phone and emails multiple times trying to find something and haven't. I don't know, man. I think you have a problem, but it might not be your wife. Comment 2. Sounds like she is trickle-truthing. I would push for more information. It's your right to know. If she is cagey or starts clamming up, you have more evidence to be concerned. Now, for the update. Thanks for all the comments from the last post. So, here's what's been happening since then. After that conversation, things got really tense between us. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more she wasn't telling me. I started noticing little things like how she'd get defensive if I asked about her day or if she seemed too eager to check her phone. It was driving me nuts, but I didn't want to come off as paranoid. I decided to give her the benefit of the doubt, but it was hard. A couple of weeks later, we had a family gathering at her parents' house. Everything seemed fine until her brother, who had a bit too much to drink, started talking about old times. He mentioned a party they had a few years ago, around the time of the incident with her ex. He laughed and said something about how rough that night was and how she disappeared for hours. My heart sank. I tried to play it cool, but I could see she was uncomfortable. Later that night, I brought it up. She got really upset and said her brother was just drunk and didn't know what he was talking about. But the way she reacted made me even more suspicious. I couldn't let it go. I told her I needed to know the truth, no matter how bad it was. She broke down and admitted that she had gone to her ex's house that night, but insisted nothing happened. She said she was just confused and needed closure. I wanted to believe her, but it felt like there was still something missing. Around this time, I started having trouble at work. The project I was stressed about wasn't going well, and my boss was getting on my case. I was distracted and couldn't focus. My performance was slipping, and I knew I had to get it together. But every time I tried to concentrate, my mind would wander back to her and what she might be hiding. One night I was working late and decided to check her social media. I noticed she had been messaging a guy I didn't recognize. It seemed innocent enough, but given everything that had happened, I couldn't help but feel uneasy. I asked her about it, and she said he was just an old friend from college. She showed me the messages, and they were pretty harmless. But I still felt like I was missing something. A few days later, I ran into an old friend of mine who used to hang out with her ex. We got to talking, and he mentioned that her ex had been bragging about how he hooked up with her that night. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I didn't know what to believe anymore. I confronted her again, and she swore it wasn't true. She said her ex was just trying to mess with me, and that he was lying. But I couldn't shake the feeling that she was still hiding something. Things came to a head when I found out she had been texting her ex. She said it was just about some old mutual friends and that it was nothing serious, but I couldn't take it anymore. I told her I needed some space to figure things out. She was devastated and begged me not to leave. She promised she would cut off all contact with her ex and do whatever it took to make things right. I wanted to believe her, but I didn't know if I could. During this time, I started thinking about my past relationships and how they had ended. I realized that I had a pattern of not trusting people and always expecting the worst. My ex had cheated on me, and I never really dealt with that betrayal. I was carrying that baggage into my current relationship, and it was affecting how I saw her. I knew I needed to work on myself if I wanted any chance of making things work. I decided to see a therapist to help me sort through my feelings. It was tough at first, but it helped me see things more clearly. I realized that I was projecting my past hurts onto her, and that I needed to give her a chance to prove herself. I also learned that I needed to communicate better and not let things fester. After a few weeks of therapy, I felt ready to talk to her again. We had a long, honest conversation about everything. She admitted that she had made mistakes and that she should have been more open with me. She apologized for hurting me and promised to be more transparent. I told her about my therapy sessions and how I was working on my trust issues. We agreed to start fresh and try to rebuild our relationship. Since then, things have been better. We're both making an effort to communicate more and be honest with each other. It's not perfect, and there are still moments of doubt, but we're working through it. I've also been doing better at work now that I'm not so distracted. It's a process, but I feel like we're on the right track. Thanks for reading. Am I the idiot for confronting my spouse? About his weird coworker and demanding answers. For context, I am giving birth to our second child next month. This pregnancy has been hard, and we have definitely drifted apart, or it feels that way to me. He was always very interested in me sexually, even during my last pregnancy, and now he isn't interested in being intimate at all unless I initiate. His mood towards me has been completely different as well lately. He just seems constantly annoyed with me, although I haven't done anything. He doesn't have the same level of empathy I felt he used to have. So here's the actual situation. I had this very strange encounter at my husband's recent work function with one of his coworkers, female, unsure of age. I generally believe myself to be very observant of social undercurrents, nonverbal communication, etc. So although I know none of what I'm about to say was overt proof, I felt some extremely strange vibes. I'm not sure if I'm just going crazy from pregnancy hormones, or if there might be something worth confronting him about more seriously. First, my toddler and I arrived at the party together. She immediately made a beeline for me and my toddler. I'm fairly sure she was one of the first people I spoke to before I could say hi to anyone else. And this was our first time meeting each other. The whole party, she was making this very concerted effort to bond with my toddler, which was strange to me. It was far beyond what you'd expect of someone who just loves kids, as she said a million times. She kept trying to be very buddy-buddy with me as well. At multiple points, she would come to sit next to me. But then, as soon as my husband came, she would jump up and leave. Second, she knew everything about my life and my husband's life. Things that I don't understand why he would have told her unless they are close. Yet when I confronted him about how strange she was towards me and how much she knew about our private life, he acted like they never talk or see each other or have any relationship at all. This is what made me the most suspicious. Like, how does she know all the intricacies of everything in our life without ever talking to him? Maybe it's not a full-on affair, but if they're just friends, then why would he lie? He has multiple female friends at work and elsewhere. I'm not a jealous person about his friendships with women. I invite them over and include them in everything I can. I make an effort to have all of his friends of whatever genders be part of our life. So I don't understand why it would be something worth lying about. I've always trusted him. I did confront him with these things, and he just kind of shrugged it off and said, "She's just weird." I don't want to make a big deal about it, but I can't tell if I'm being irrational because of the pregnancy, or if these things are actually the red flags I feel like they are. Please help. I need to know if I'm going crazy. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Tell him you plan on reaching out to her for lunch, as she seemed really friendly, and see what he says. Say she was taken with your toddler, and she might make a great babysitter while you go on a date night since she loves kids so much. See if he seems uncomfortable with you befriending her. If he says no, ask him why. Mind you, if she is just weird, I don't recommend you following through with that suggestion. Comment 2. He shrugged it off and said, "She's just weird." Did you ask why he would tell so much of his personal life to a weirdo? Or did she find this out on her own, which means she's researching him or stalking him? I'd call her up and tell her you really liked meeting her and want to hang out and be friends. Now for the update. Hey everyone, a lot has happened since my last post. So, after that work function, I couldn't shake off the weird vibes from my husband's coworker. I decided to do a bit of digging on my own. I know it sounds paranoid, but I needed to know if I was just being hormonal, or if there was something more to it. I started by checking his phone when he was in the shower. I know, not the most ethical move, but I was desperate. I didn't find anything too incriminating, just a few texts between them that seemed friendly, but nothing more. Still, something felt off. The next day, I decided to drop by his office unannounced. I brought our toddler along as a sort of cover, pretending it was just a spontaneous visit. When we got there, his coworker was the first person we saw. She seemed genuinely surprised to see us, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes. Panic, maybe? She quickly composed herself and started chatting with our toddler again. But I noticed she kept glancing towards my husband's office. When we finally saw my husband, he looked shocked and a bit annoyed to see us. He tried to play it off, saying he was just busy, but I could tell he was hiding something. I didn't confront him there. I didn't want to make a scene in front of his coworkers, but the whole thing left me feeling even more uneasy. That night, I brought it up again. I told him about my visit and how his coworker reacted. He got defensive, saying I was overreacting and that I needed to trust him. But his defensiveness only made me more suspicious. I asked him point blank if there was something going on between them, and he flat out denied it. He said she was just a friendly coworker, and that I was reading too much into things. Over the next few days, things got even weirder. My husband started coming home later and later, always with some excuse about work. He was also more distant than ever, barely talking to me and avoiding any kind of physical contact. I felt like I was losing him, and it was tearing me apart. Then, a couple of days ago, I got a call from one of his other coworkers. She told me she had seen my husband and the coworker having lunch together, looking very cozy. She said she didn't want to get involved, but felt I had a right to know. This was the final straw for me. I confronted my husband again, and this time he couldn't deny it. He admitted they had been spending time together, but insisted it was just as friends. He said he didn't tell me because he knew I would overreact. I was devastated. I felt like my worst fears were coming true. I asked him if he had feelings for her, and he hesitated before saying no. But that hesitation spoke volumes. I told him I needed some space to think, and he agreed to stay with a friend for a few days. During this time, I started to reflect on our relationship. I thought about how things had changed since my pregnancy, and how distant he had become. I realized that this wasn't just about his coworker, it was about us. We had drifted apart, and I didn't know if we could find our way back to each other. I also started to think about my own feelings and how I had been coping with the pregnancy. I realized I had been so focused on the baby and our toddler that I had neglected our relationship. I wondered if my husband's behavior was a reaction to feeling neglected and unimportant. But even if that was the case, it didn't excuse his actions. I decided to talk to him one last time. I told him how I felt and asked him if he was willing to work on our relationship. He said he was, but I could tell his heart wasn't in it. He seemed more interested in defending himself than in fixing things between us. I asked him if he still loved me, and he said he did, but it felt like an empty reassurance. In the end, we decided to take a break. He moved out temporarily, and we agreed to go to couples therapy. But deep down, I knew this was the beginning of the end. The trust between us was shattered, and I didn't know if we could ever rebuild it. As I sit here writing this, I feel a mix of sadness and relief. Sadness because I know our relationship may be over, and relief because at least now I know the truth. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know that I need to focus on myself and my children. They are my priority, and I will do whatever it takes to protect them. Thank you for reading. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.